President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un slated to meet face-to-face 1 week from today. The White House revealing that the summit will take place on June 12th at 9 a.m. local time in Singapore. This coming as Singapore is issuing a commemorative medal or medallion ahead of the summit celebrating world peace. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired General Jack Keane. General, your take on this, what comes out of this meeting, if there will be additional meetings, and how will we hold the line on complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization?
Yeah, well, first of all, having the meeting itself is historic, as you mentioned in the introduction. And you got to give the Trump team here a lot of credit, because no president, having dealt with North Korea over nuclear issues now for decades, has ever got to this point. So that's number one. You know, number two, there's some low-hanging fruit here. You know, end the Korean War, the armistice, propose a peace treaty that all the participants can sign, bring the North Korean and South Korean families together that have been separated by the war. But then the real main element of the meeting has got to be an agreement for a process going forward that actually leads to, as you mentioned, complete denuclearization. That is what we've got to be looking for. Now, we won't have all the details of that probably, but they have got to commit to a framework that has some elements like this, Dagan. Where are all your nukes? Because we don't know where they all are, to be quite frank about it. And research sites, fuel sites, storage sites, and then the process of how we're going to verify that with U.S. inspectors and also with international inspectors. We're not going to rely on the IAEA. That would be a failed thing to do. So that's what we should be looking for, that there's an agreement to do that. And certainly there'll be subsequent meetings. There's got to be.
But what you would expect based on history with North Korea and even Kim Jong-un's father and grandfather would be, we make promises, but we want immediate economic help. We want immediate sanctions relief. And then we never, again, we take a lot if you're North Korea, and we give very little.
You know, you're absolutely right about that. And given that's been so successful for them in the past, you know, as you mentioned, they're going to put that on the table. The president team goes in here very clear-eyed. They're not going to give up on the sanctions that we have in place, certainly. We can't do anything like that until the actual dismantling of the nuclear program is underway and is a commitment to continue it. You know, at best, what Kim Jong-un is hoping for is get rid of the sanctions, and I'll possibly just do partial denuclearization, but always hold on to something to guarantee the preservation of the regime. And that's the key element that we have to put on the table. How are we going to guarantee his security indefinitely, because he's such a young man and he's got 40 years in front of him?
Turning to U.S. relations with China, again, China critical in the sanctions and sanctions relief going forward with North Korea. House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes spoke with Maria Bartiromo back in March about the growing military threat from Beijing. General, listen to this and I'll get your reaction.
The Chinese just opened up a base, a military base in Djibouti. Djibouti's at the entrance to the Red Sea, in the heart of the Middle East, in the Indian Ocean, a long way away from China. We believe that they are looking at investing in ports and infrastructure around the globe, not just for military capabilities, but also to control those governments, to have the ability to lobby and manipulate governments.
General, with China expanding its military in Africa and then even more recent issues dealing in the South China Sea, how does the U.S. counter this?
Yeah, this is a growing problem. We're actually on a collision course, Dagan, with China. China right now is dominating in the Pacific, and what they're doing there is the militarization of the South China Sea. They operate below the level of conflict, challenging our allies' sovereignty, grinding them down day in and day out with overflights, violations of fishing rights, etc., and also a very significant military buildup that has an intimidation coercion campaign behind it. They're at parity right now with us in the Pacific, and they clearly intend to dominate it, and they want the United States out of there. President Xi has said this. He sees China as a rising power, the United States as a declining power, and sometime beyond 2030, he sees China as being the preeminent power in the world, replacing the United States as the global power. And they use the economic engine, infrastructure, and energy development, and then militarization to gain geopolitical advantage over our allies and other countries. And yes, the Middle East is a big deal for them. 62% of their oil comes out of there, and with the consumption rates rising in China, those numbers are going to increase. That's why that base is sitting there in Djibouti. They're going to put another one into Pakistan. So they are a rising global power, protecting their commercial and economic interests.
And again, it's economic, and it's also it's our national security that they go hand in hand. The Wall Street Journal: China skirts America's anti-dumping tariffs on steel, with these manufacturers backed by the government avoiding levies in the U.S. and Europe by shutting production at home and expanding overseas. So if we get tough with them on one front, we're getting tough with them on all fronts. And General, I want to bring up the issue of this former Navy sailor who was pardoned by President Trump is now planning to sue the Obama administration or officials there, alleging that he was subject to unequal protection under the law. Your response to this?
Yeah, well, you know, it's always difficult to second guess a court case because you're not there, you don't get all the evidence and facts. But I think most Americans have been very uncomfortable about that court case. A sailor going to prison for taking a photograph, even though it was inside a classified submarine with him and his buddies. Why that was a felony and why he received a prison sentence is the issue. He is guilty of mishandling classified information, and he had a right to be charged for that. That should have been a misdemeanor, and that's about it. And comparing it to Hillary Clinton, well, at some point, Clinton and her advisors all knew that they had classified information on their server, and certainly on their emails. And at that point, everything should have stopped. They should have brought in the proper authorities, had them take a look at what's happened here, and then, of course, stop the server operations. Right. So at that point, it's mishandling information. Comey said there never was intent, but once they knew it was there, then they're mishandling classified information.
General, great to see you. Thank you so much, sir. General Jack Keane. Take care.
Good talking to you, Dagan.
Always a pleasure.